Hello, I'm looking at all of you, many people who are getting involved with this wonderful organization. How many of you, since seeing this picture, or how many of you have seen this picture? Show of hands. So, what does it mean? Does it mean as soon as you light a match, you can start lighting more matches, and that will sort of set everything ablaze? So, I'll start off with three people who have really impacted our profession. The first is Lottie Reichhoff. So, I recently flew to Lottie's home with the goal of filming all of the people who had passed away before her light had gone. So I fly over there, I visit Lottie, I film an interview with her. And it's important for all of us to remember this profession because she's one of those three people I'm going to talk about. Lottie herself is from Germany. She moved here from Germany to America with her family. She didn't know English. She didn't speak English. She didn't know a single word of it. She moved here with her family at age 3. So when she's in kindergarten at age 5, she doesn't speak a word of English. So she's sitting next to her friend, and her friend is helping Lottie understand what's going on with school. She's giving her little notes. And Lottie starts to understand what it feels like to not have an interpreter. And she understands what it's like to not understand school. And Lottie becomes a good interpreter because she understands and feels the same about not knowing the language and not understanding how to, culturally fit with people. So we'll go back to her again. Our next person is Sharon Newman Solo. So Sharon Newman Solo. Do you guys know who she is? She was really unhappy with the Vietnam War. And she was not happy of being involved with the college years during her college years in the 1960s. She's also an interpreter herself at that college. And I don't know if you guys are too young to remember, but when we were involved in the Vietnam War, there were many people that wanted to close colleges and not get involved with the war, and not allow people to not get involved with the war. And she was, of course, involved with the protests against the Vietnam War. So she gets involved with the protests, and the colleges and her class. There was one person from her class that would go into her classroom and would say, "Oh, we're closing classes, no more classes," and so she would get involved with that because she didn't know. So at the same time, she herself being an interpreter, she would she would go in and protest, and then give up, and then go in and interpret a class. So one time, what happened is her friend, she's is also getting involved with the protest, and so she's going into classes. They're trying to close up the classes, and so her friend goes in and sees her sitting there interpreting. And she says, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Oh, it's my job. I'm an interpreter." So she felt as though it's not her right to con- control deaf people's information. If you're not involved with the protest, that's fine. I will still sit there and interpret so that you can learn the lesson. And so they all learned a lesson from Sarah. And so next we'll move on to our third person, Joanne Dobecki Shotbell. Is Carla Mathers here? She left? Okay, fine, whatever. Kidding, of course. So Carla, Joanne was actually her teacher at CSI College. So I flew out to Ireland at CSI College to film Joanne, and I asked her a lot of questions about her life because she herself is a coda. And so here's Joanne again. So when I flew out to sit down and interview and ask all my questions about her life, I wanted to know why she became an interpreter and why she got involved with this profession. Do you know Joanne herself was a coda? Her family lived during World War II. Her mother and father were both deaf, and Joanne is just 5 years old. And her baby sister gets born. And her dad's a really smart man, and he made a lot of technology and put up a lot of lights. So when the baby would cry, the light would flash up, flash on, and so at night, uh, during World War II, well, let me back up a little bit. So those lights would flash up all night, you know. And Joanne made these comments looking back and remembering that she would see her parents and they were not happy from the military constantly marching around their house. And they would, bang on the door, and as they would open it, Joanne and her parents would come to the door and say, "What's up?" And so they're both deaf, and the military is sitting there trying to explain to them. They're saying the lights turning on and off all night. We can't have that because the enemy is flying overnight, and they're going to think that it's some kind of warning, and so they will drop bombs on your house. So Joanne told the story about her dad saying, "Come here and interpret the military people speaking to me." So Joanne would interpret, and she said, "I didn't know what the word enemy meant. I didn't know what they meant when they said they would be dropping bombs on us." So Joanne, she sits there and she said, "I feel like I need to learn about this topic at just the age of 5." So she studies language really hard, and she continues studying and learning, and eventually she starts a deaf club. And all the deaf people line up because they see that she's a really smart girl, Joanne. And she's really studious and she seems to just know everything. So they go and there's a huge line, and they would say like, "Oh, I don't understand this paper. I don't understand what it says. Can you read it to me to clarify it?" So Joanne would study the paper, she would learn it, she would diligently explain it. But here's an important side note here. Joanne wasn't big-headed. She wouldn't say, "Oh, these things are definitely for you." Joanne would just explain it. She wouldn't give her opinion. She would allow the deaf person to decide their own fate. So these three people that I mentioned are all beautiful people who have really helped our profession. So our next topic is that we have a problem. We're struggling to find interpreters, struggling to find teachers, and it's, what do we do about this? We need more people like those three that I just gave, those three examples. So I want you to try to open up your imagination about the world today. There are interpreters of all different kinds. Some understand deaf people. There are interpreters that understand deaf culture. Interpreters that understand and can really relate to deaf people, and that's important. There are teachers who are really skilled at signing. Can you imagine this? If we don't try to converse and interview people from ago, we'll forget. We must learn about the past, and it's important to understand how to make that world again. My purpose and my goal this whole time of documenting these people and documenting history, or that's been my purpose and my goal this whole time, was documenting that history. So that little girl is me in those pictures. I'm born, and I don't know why, but I always felt a really special connection with people, with stories, with books. And I remember stories about a man, he's a person named Peter, Peter Pan. And I remember he could fly, right? So, I'm around 5 years old, and I really felt this connection with Peter Pan. And I thought, well, I can too. So I would jump up onto the table and try to jump off and fly. And I couldn't do it, obviously. I would tumble down, and I broke my arm. But what's important is that I felt a connection with the story of Peter Pan. I didn't care about the broken arm. And so if you take that to today, and now I'm reading about Buffalo Bill, Bill Cody. I'm reading about it, and I said, "Oh, I wish I could interview Bill Cody. I want to interview all these people. I would love to just get the chance to talk to them. I mean, Buffalo Bill is dead already, but I just wish I could." So now, if we don't become like like a little girl inside, like I was, little boy, whatever, if we don't start, documenting the past, what are we going to do with our profession? We can't look forward or look back. So our goal, my goal, is to really try to encapsulate the interpreting world and understand how it was previously, understand the good and the bad. We have to document it and try to capture it. There are many young people, young students today, who you explain these people, you explain about previous interpreters and teachers, and they'll just kind of scoff it off. Why is that important? I don't care about that. I don't care about the past. And it's sad to see that. And maybe we need more people to write about history and interview more people from the past. And see how a lot of those candles are starting to go? it's important. You remember those wonderful interpreters from the past? Gary Snyderson? He used to teach and train a long time ago, and he would explain about history. Gary would be sitting there in the front. He would be signing at me, and I wasn't able to write it down. It would get lost. All that information, the next week, 2 weeks, it would be gone. That really impacted me. So I rolled up my sleeves and I said, no more going forward. I need to start asking questions. So that woman was my mom at the age of 16. So she was in high school, and her best friend in the whole world moved. And my mother was, she didn't know what to do. So she wanted to move and go visit her friend. So her friend said, yeah, come on, visit. Hop on a train and come visit me. And my mom said, I don't know, I'm afraid. So she asked her mom, can I go on a train? And her mother was, or she was afraid to ask her mother that. So what happened is that she never did get on a train and that connection was lost. She never got to go visit her friend. 1 year later, her mom, uh, she she asked for permission to go on the train. So she asked her mother to go on the train, and she said, "Oh yeah, go. Of course you can go." And she was surprised. And she said her mom taught her a lesson that it's not easy asking to take the train. And it's not easy to ask. It's not easy to, call people. You might feel like you're pestering them, calling them and asking them if I can get an interview, if I can document something about your life, if I can record something. It's not easy. But if we don't, we won't have the opportunity to grab it later. And those people's candles from before us will get snuffed out. So, in a perfect world with interpreters and teachers, we need to have those wonderful people and their histories. So, those three examples I gave earlier, their history will help all of us become better interpreters and better people. And we need all of your stories. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be like my mother. Don't be afraid. Ask to get on the train. We can successfully capture our history. Okay? Thank you all.